What's going on, Giants fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I want to talk about the preseason opener on Friday night against the Detroit Lions. But first, before I get into that, make sure to check us out on all of our social media on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Big Blue Avenue. We appreciate all your support. I apologize for any audio issues today. I am upstate. Have a wedding to attend later today, so I wanted to get this video out before all those shenanigans begin. Quick friendly neighborhood reminder: if you haven't checked out our sponsor yet and you like the sports bet, make sure to check out BetUS. You can sign up with our promo code below at Join125. Get a 125% sign-up bonus where you can bet on the go, anywhere, anytime. That's BetUS, America's #1 favorite sports book, where the game begins. And now let's get into the meat of this video. The Giants fall to the Detroit Lions 21-16 in their preseason opener at Ford Field on Friday night. It was a game that the Giants led predominantly throughout. They were up 13-3 about halfway through, and then the Lions scored a touchdown, hit the 2-point conversion. Giants were up by 2, and then the Giants hit a field goal. Detroit was up 14-13. Giants hit a field goal, and then Detroit scored the game-winning touchdown. But ironically enough, the game was a pretty much script of the last few seasons for the Giants. Now, I know it's the preseason opener, but the offense struggled. Only 243 total yards of offense, 135 through the air. The Giants were just 2 for 13 on third down, but you know what? It's basically a scrimmage. It's the first preseason game. Most of the starters did not play. I believe the only guys lined up to start this year that played were Isaiah Hodgins, Daniel Bellinger for like 10 to 12 snaps each, because the Giants will likely go with a 2 tight end alignment more often than not, with Waller and Bellinger in there. I'm intrigued to see what happens at the interior offensive line with John Michael Schmitz at center, Ben Bredesen, Josh Azudu. All 3 of those guys played Friday night. Schmitz looked good. Nobody else looked great at all. Evan Neal did not play. He's still in concussion protocol. Andrew Thomas got the night off. In addition to veteran Mark Lewinsky did not play. So those 3 guys are likely penciled in as starters, the 2 tackles and Glow. The question is who starts at center, who starts at left guard. Right now, John Michael Schmitz is the favorite to start at center, and I was very impressed with his play and the way he carried himself in his post-game presser with the media. He handled it very well. The Giants' offensive line did give up 5 sacks to the Lions, which is not good. Wyatt Davis and Corey Cunningham definitely struggled. Those 2 guys likely will not make the roster to begin with, but Tommy DeVito, who, by the way, was outstanding in the second half, considering what he was dealing with, was sacked 5 times, a guy who played his guts out. And Wyatt Davis and Corey Cunningham definitely each gave up 1 sack each. If I had to put my money on it, each of those guys gave up at least 2 sacks apiece, but yeah, they really struggled. Wyatt Davis was drafted as a guard, back in 2021. So I was a little bit surprised to see him starting the second half at right tackle. I'm assuming, the Giants slowly working Marcus McKeithen back, even though he's off PUP now. Evan Neal's concussion forced Matt Pert to start at right tackle. So after that, you have Corey Cunningham. Tyre Phillips has now shifted into guard. He'll likely make the 53-man as a reserve guard. With McKeithen, Neal, and Phillips sliding in there, there's really not much depth. So one thing we learned last year, and seems to be a concern, at least to start the preseason this year, is the depth. We know the Giants have improved their roster. They've improved their starters. They've tried their best to improve their depth without splurging in free agency. A lot of this is going to take time and work on developing young talent, which Joe Shane has told us that he wants to do. Now, to get into some more of the team's stats, the Lions, they control the time of possession, possessing the ball for over 33 minutes. I mentioned the sack numbers. I mentioned the 2 for 13 on third down. The The Giants had 8 penalties. They did win the turnover battle, though, 2-1, and it was technically 2-0 because their one turnover came on the last offensive play of the game where Tommy DeVito threw up a Hail Mary on a 4th and long, which was basically a punt. What else was DeVito going to do? He mentioned his post-game presser. He got yelled at by the coaches for throwing a check down on a 4th and long during a practice once during training camp. So, it's interesting to see DeVito come back and work his way. And speaking of Tommy DeVito, let's spend some time on this guy. How about Tommy DeVito to Tommy Sweeney? The Don Bosco connection is real, folks. Tommy DeVito, Livingston, New Jersey kid, went to high school in Jersey out in Ramsey. Had an impressive night. 15-24, 155 yards, and the 1 touchdown despite the pick on the Hail Mary pass and then getting sacked 5 times. He had 4 rushes for 11 yards as well. He's a field general. That's what he is. And he's trying to make the practice squad as a quarterback number 3 this season because we know the Giants almost never carry 3 quarterbacks. And that's why I think the Giants are being very conservative with the play of Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor this preseason. So neither of them get hurt because they only plan on carrying 2 quarterbacks. Love that throw to Tommy Sweeney. Again, DeVito was a freshman at Don Bosco Prep when Sweeney was a senior. So DeVito mentioned that at Don Bosco they have freshman ball, sophomore ball, JV, and then, of course, varsity. And DeVito played for the lower 3 and suited up for varsity his freshman year but didn't play. So he developed somewhat of a relationship with Sweeney there. So ironically enough, same high school, same name, and, hey, 10 years later, hey, throw for a touchdown pass in the preseason. The Giants' only touchdown of the night, by the way. They wound up kicking 3 field goals outside of that. I thought Jashawn Corbin had good moments. The running back out of FSU had 3 rushes for 40 yards, including a 33-yard run. James Robinson struggled. Eric Gray struggled in the running game but had 2 receptions. He also had 3 kickoff returns for 62 total yards. He also handled punt returns as well. Obviously Gary Brightwell is battling for a roster spot. He's on the bubble and currently has an injury, so that's not good for him special teams-wise because we know the Giants are definitely having Barkley, Breida, and Gray on the roster. If they elect to carry a 4th running back, the battle is between Jashawn Corbin and Gary Brightwell. They could elect to go 3 running backs and put Chris Myrick as the fullback, as technically their 4th back, but we'll see if they do that this season. That's what they did last year. Receivers, David Sills led the team in receiving yards. Shocker there, preseason legend. 2 catches for 36 yards. Cole Beasley, clearly ahead of Jamison Crowder on this depth chart. Sterling Shepard did not dress, in addition to Darius Slayton and Paris Campbell. Beasley had 4 catches for 33 yards. Crowder had 2 for 32. And Tommy Sweeney had the 14-yard touchdown reception. The Giants love their slot receivers. I thought Beasley did a fine job. He got decked on that one play by Brian Branch. I think Tyrod was still in the game at that point. But one receiver, though, I was not impressed by, who's on the roster bubble, likely on the outs right now, possibly vying for a practice squad spot, is Bryce Ford Wheaton, the undrafted free agent out of West Virginia, a guy who wanted to come to the Giants, had 0 catches on 3 targets. That's the bad news. The good news, he still has 2 preseason games left to potentially change his fortune. If he wants to earn a practice squad spot, he's going to have to play better. In my opinion, there's little to no shot he even comes close to cracking the 53-man roster. He'll have to have 3 touchdown games each in the next 2 preseason games for him to have a slight chance. So that's pretty much my analysis on the offense. I actually thought Jack Anderson was good at center. I know he was a reserve guard last year. Despite that one holding penalty, he looked okay. Again, that's not saying much, though, because the rest of the offensive line was atrocious. Defensively, I thought the young defensive backs really impressed. Deontay Banks was tested twice early. That deep ball to Jameson Williams, he was able to stay stride for stride with him in that press man coverage and did a really nice job. No flags either. And that's a play where, a lot of young corners possibly get flagged on, and he didn't for either one. Trey Hawkins had a bunch of tackles, which was good to see. I believe he had 5. He also could have picked off the first play of the game that Pinnock did. It was a duck thrown up by Nate Sudfeld. Speaking of Jason Pinnock, my goodness. He is currently in line to be that number 2 safety next to Xavier McKinney. But Pinnock had a pick on the first play of the game. He's been very impressive in training camp and OTAs, had 2 passes defended along with 1 tackle for loss in the backfield. He was a lot of fun to watch, I'll say. Dane Belton, too, a guy who really thrived last year when he wasn't hurt as a rookie. Belton also had a pick last night, and I believe like a 43-yard return following the pick. Belton also had 2 tackles and a pass defended. This is going to be a battle to monitor throughout preseason. I think Pinnock is ahead right now based off pure experience, but, Pinnock bounced around a couple teams a little bit before the Giants. He was on the Jets. He was on the Bills. I believe he was drafted by the Jets, actually, and now he's a Giant. So he's hoping to crack this 53-man roster. I think he's a shoo-in for the roster, but will he start? That's the question for him. I think Belton is a lock as well. I think more of the bubble players are behind the 3 safeties. With these 2 in X, I think Travarius Owens and Bobby McCain might be battling for a spot. I think those are the 2 you have to look out for as far as, roster competition, despite McCain being a 7-year, 8-year veteran. Defensively as well, Javarius Owens had 2 tackles and 1 pass defended, as I mentioned his name just a few moments ago. This is a question I've had trouble answering. Carter Coughlin and Cam Brown, right? So linebackers last night, Okereke did not play. McFadden and Coughlin started the game. Beavers, obviously coming back from I believe he had the torn Achilles last year or the torn ACL. It was one or the other. There were so many torn ACLs last year. You have trouble keeping count after a while. But I thought Carter Coughlin was a mixed bag Friday night. He looked good at times. He had some nice tackles, a very quick young player, special teams ace the last few seasons. He did have 1 missed tackle, though, in the backfield. I think if he made that, he would have been in my tier of, wow, this guy had an awesome night. But unfortunately, that missed tackle was not a good look for Carter Coughlin right there, a guy on the roster bubble. I do have him in as of right now. I thought he had a decent performance, and I thought he played well enough to, possibly build on that momentum into the next 2 preseason games, and I think he will. I think he'll make this roster. Cam Brown is another guy, 4 tackles in the preseason game last night. Let's be realistic, folks. Neither Carter Coughlin or Cam Brown will be playing linebacker during the regular season. They'll both be on special teams if they're to make this 53-man roster. The question is, with all the roster upgrades and looking to improve, is there enough room for both of these players? I think before the Jared Davis injury, the answer would have been no. But now that Jared Davis is hurt, right, you have Beavers who's coming off an injury. Okereke is a free agent. McFadden's a young player, right? So you need guys who have been on the team for a few years now, right? You have 2 second-year backers, and you have Okereke, the free agent. Coughlin and Brown were both drafted together on day 3 in 2020. They've been on the team for a long time. They're special teams aces. I think both of them will make the 53-man roster. I think the Giants carry 5 inside linebackers, and those are 2. I think they're going to go live. Last year we weren't sure what was going to happen. Austin Calitro ended up making the roster, and that was very interesting. So we'll see what happens here. I'm confident with young guys at the linebacker position. I think we're going to see big improvements from Micah McFadden this year. Darian Beavers is another guy who I'm very excited about. He might be a little bit overhyped by majority of the fan base, but for good reason. And then Okereke is our number 1. So, yeah, that's my answer to that question. And then, the Giants only had 1 sack last night. I thought Habakkuk Baldonado was robbed. I thought he should have had 2 sacks. Maybe he went and hit the quarterback a little hard. I believe it was Adrian Martinez at that point, but Baldonado was impressive. 3 tackles, 1 sack, 1 QB hit. Tamon Fox clearly ahead of O'Shane Ximenez. I'm shocked the Giants brought him back. The only reason why they brought X back is because after the draft, they wound up not coming away with any edge rushers in the NFL draft. So, all right, O'Shane's still on the market. Let's bring him back for a 1-year deal. Guy who knows the system. We need to fill a 90-man roster anyway, so let's bring him back. He's one of our own. However, O'Shane, I don't think will make this 53-man roster. He's a guy who is entering his 5th season in the NFL now. He's yet to been able to prove to set an edge consistently. So Tomon Fox, the 2 QB hits, one on the first play of the game on Sudfeld that led to the Pinnock interception. I think Tomon Fox, undrafted free agent out of UNC last year, should be that 4th edge rusher right now behind Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, and Jahad Ward. I think Zimenez's chance is if somebody gets hurt ahead of him. I think they only go with 4 edge on the 53-man, and then Baldonado will re-sign to the practice squad. That's my opinion right now. I thought safety Alex Cook had a decent game, 7 tackles, undrafted free agent out of Washington, helped on that second down play on the goal line. Detroit wound up punching it in on the following play. But, I liked Alex Cook's effort. I liked what I saw out of Brandon Bryant as well. Guys who won't make the roster, but there are a bunch of spots open on the practice squad. So you never know what can happen. Special teams. Special teams was hot and cold. Graham Gano was automatic, 3 for 3 field goal, 48-yard field goal as well. But the special teams displayed poor tackling last night and gave up a punt return for a touchdown. As much as I want to blame Thomas McGaughey for this, I think he's a little bit of an overrated special teams coordinator. This goes right up to Brian Dable. He has to do a better job of communicating on special teams and making sure all those guys are on the field. The Giants had 10 players on the field, had to call a timeout, and then the next play give up a 95-plus yard touchdown. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Injuries. So the Giants had 2 injuries to players. One key player, another player who's battling for roster spot, Colin Johnson, was lost early last season in the preseason with an ACL, and now he has an injury after Friday night game in Detroit. Hopefully he's okay and can play in next week's preseason game. Pulling for him to make a good showing. Cordell Flott, guy who had Darnay Holmes for the starting corner spot, left with an abdominal injury. Interesting to see if he plays next week. I'm not so sure, but hopefully both of those guys are okay. Cordell Flott did have a nice pass break up him as well. Other injuries to just go over quick. Giants waived receiver Jeff Smith earlier this week. A lot of people thought he might make him as a gunner this year. The Giants signed nose tackle Donovan Jeter to take his place, who had a decent game last night. Evan Neal still in concussion protocol. And I mentioned Marcus McKeithen, activator from PUP on Monday, as well as Ashawn Robinson, the defensive lineman who did not dress last night. Folks, if you like what you watch, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Big Blue Avenue. Ring the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment as well if you have any questions on anything I discussed or went over. Appreciate all the support. Again, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, at Big Blue Avenue. Had a lot of live updated tweets last night. And folks, I'll catch you all on the next video. Without further ado, let's go Big Blue.